we'd stopped and we were talking about all the hot sign that we were seeing. And like I was talking to the camera or Jake, like we were just having a conversation. And all of a sudden I look up and there's a shooter buck coming towards us, and we just did not have enough cover. Had we had enough cover, I think we'd have got him. But I think always planning ahead or looking at that next move and looking how you're going to draw, you know, when you're going to draw, when you're going to shoot, and always be extremely focused is very, very important when you're on the ground or a tree stand. But I think being on the ground and being mobile, kind of, you have to almost take it a step further. Like you cannot take any second for granted, because as soon as you do, as soon as you let your guard down, right, boom, there he is, right, and then you've messed it up.
Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, episode number 260. Zach FERENBAUGH, The Hunting Public. Support for the Big Buck Registry and the Deer Hunt Podcast comes from Rackology, everything you need in one bag. Hunter's Blend Coffee, defending hunting one cup at a time. Finally, there's a coffee that helps rather than hurts your freedom to hunt. Use the code BBR to receive 10% off your next Hunter's Blend order. Polar Works Coolers and the Chill Zone, specializing in the most durable, reliable thermal cups and coolers. Keep your drinks hot or cold in any element. Covert Scouting Cameras, remote cameras for hunting, wildlife, and security. Morse's Sporting Goods, a full line of sporting goods without the sales tax. And Big Buck merch. You can get cool, high-quality Big Buck t-shirts, long-sleeve t-shirts, and hoodies. And show support for this podcast by visiting www.bigbuckregistry.com/MERCH. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hi, this is Barry Wenzel from Brothers of the Bow and Trophy Whitetail Boot Camps. I'm not really sure what a podcast is, but you're about to push play on what is now my favorite podcast, Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hi, this is Dan Infold from HuntingBeast.com. You're about to listen to one of my favorite podcasts, Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
This is John Eberhardt. I've been hunting out of a saddle since 1981. I'm about to listen to my favorite podcast, Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow predators. My name is Jay, and thank you for tuning in to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. For Dusty Phillips and Jim Keller and the entire staff here at the Big Buck Registry, welcome to this week's show. There are a couple things I'd like you to do for us if you could. If you would, please check us out on iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a review. With your help, we're going to try and push this show up the iTunes charts. I know we have a lot of listeners out there, and I need you to take some action. I need you to leave a review and subscribe to the show. If you do subscribe, that'll give you access and notification each and every week that a new show is released. You can also access this show in its entirety on YouTube, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and as an Amazon Alexa skill. Go to Alexa and say, Alexa, enable Big Buck Registry. It's all right there for you to access on demand at your fingertips. Regarding the harness program, we have an ample supply of harnesses to give away from our volunteer donors. If you're in need of a full-body harness, please send an email to j@bigbuckregistry.com. Zach FERENBAUGH is an integral part of the media company The Hunting Public, where he is helping to bring the masses unfiltered public land hunts from across the country. Following in the footsteps of great hunters like Dan Infold and the group from Whitetail Adrenaline, Zach and his partners are finding ways to successfully hunt those high-pressured public lands and deliver the hunts along the way using the latest media distribution mechanisms like Amazon Video, YouTube, and podcasting. Zach shares his strategies and techniques that he uses to locate and bring down big, mature whitetail bucks. We'll get to our entire interview with Zach FERENBAUGH in just one moment, but before we do, let's hear from our friends at Rackology, Hunter's Blend Coffee, and Jim Keller with the Deer News.
I still can't believe that's all you're taking.
I got everything I need all in one bag.
Rackology Deer Supplement and Attractant, developed through years of intense scientific research, comes a product that puts it all in one bag. Superior attractant, scientifically formulated vitamins and minerals, and all at a much better price. To get yours today, please check out rackology.org for a list of dealers. Rackology, how can you afford not to use it? Everything deer need, all in one bag.
Hunter-friendly coffee retailers are great, but ever wonder where they buy it from? Now there's a company that imports directly from farmers, zero middlemen, roasts it, and ships it right to your door. From the farmer's fields to your morning cup, Hunter's Blend Coffee has been in the hands of hunters. Through their giving, your coffee supports the RMEF, Whitetails Unlimited, and Women's Hunting Associations, and many others. Now you can defend hunting one cup at a time. Not bad for a cup of coffee. And did I mention, it is so good.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News. Our first story this week: bow hunter severely mauled by black bear in Riverside County, California. This story is from the LA Times website and was reported by Hannah Fry. A bow hunter is recovering after authorities say he was severely mauled by a black bear that he had wounded with an arrow in the Banning Canyon area of Riverside County. 3 people were hunting together Friday at about 7 p.m. when one of the hunters shot a bear with an arrow. When the man approached the wounded bear, it attacked him, California Department of Fish and Wildlife Captain Patrick Foy said on Tuesday. The man suffered severe injuries to his upper torso, face, and arms and was taken to a hospital for treatment. While bear attacks on humans are extremely rare, Foy said, animals can become aggressive if they're wounded or feel threatened. It's something that we learn at the very beginning of hunter education. After you shoot an animal and approach it, you need to be very careful, he said. They teach you to be prepared with a follow-up shot in case the animal runs or is suffering needlessly. The bear died of its wounds and was taken to a lab to be studied. It was unclear how large the bear was, but experts say adult black bears can weigh between 100 and 500 pounds, depending on the season and the animal's age and sex. Standing upright on their hind legs, black bears can reach 6 feet tall. Archery bear hunting season in California runs from August 18th through September 9th. Hunters are required to obtain a license and a bear tag according to state rules. A maximum of 1,700 bears can be taken during the season in California. At the end of August, 24 bears have been killed by hunters in California this year, according to the Department of Fish and Wildlife data. Oregon hunter in critical condition after hanging upside down from tree stand for 2 days. This story is from the Fox News website and was reported by Michelle Gant. An Oregon hunter is in critical condition after falling from his tree stand and getting tangled in his harness over 20 feet in the air, hanging upside down for 2 days. The man, identified as Eddie Volker, 70, suffered critical injuries and is in a medically induced coma after being airlifted from the area near Umatilla National Forest to a hospital in Richland, Washington, KTVZ reported. The Union County Sheriff's Office said in a press release Volker was found by another hunter at about 11:15 a.m. Tuesday, north of Highway 244, northwest of Fraser, Four Corners area in eastern Oregon. Upon discovering Volker, the witness had to drive to the highway in order to get cell service so he could call for help. Sheriff's deputies from Union County and nearby Umatilla County along the U.S. Forest Service and medics from LeGrand and Pendleton were dispatched to locate Volker. While crew members were getting him down with a bucket truck, Volker lost consciousness and his heart stopped beating because blood flow that had been cut off to his lower body was suddenly restored, according to KTVZ. He was then taken by ambulance to a makeshift landing zone where he was then transported to the Life Flight helicopter that took him to Cadlick Regional Medical Center, according to the press release. A Volker's family friend, Jeanette Jacoby, told the East Oregonian he was put in a drug-induced coma Wednesday after doctors performed a procedure to relieve pressure on his brain. While Volker was breathing on his own for a while, he had to be placed back on a ventilator Thursday. Jacoby said Volker had been alone on the hunting trip, aside from his dogs. His family has since retrieved them along with some of his gear. She also said the family is thankful to the rescuers and everyone who helped rescue Volker. Interior Department okays deer hunting near Philadelphia International Airport. This story is from the Fox News website and was reported by Janine Puhak. Hunting enthusiasts in the Philadelphia area have a new opportunity to pursue their game locally as the U.S. Department of Interior has announced that white-tailed deer hunting will be allowed at a national wildlife refuge adjacent to Philadelphia International Airport. Allowing only bow and arrow, the hunt will be limited to 10 days a year on the 1,000-acre expanse. In a September 7th statement, Secretary of the Interior Ryan Zinke officially greenlighted hunting and John Hines National Wildlife Refuge, noting that the move is part of his efforts to expand community access to public land. Slated to begin in 2019, the refuge will be closed to the public on hunt days, WHYY reports. In addition, no more than 12 hunters will be allowed to hunt per day and will be assigned by lottery with preference given to youth first-time hunters, disabled hunters, and veterans. The move to open up the hunting of white-tailed deer in the refuge is part of over 251,000 acres of new or expanded hunting and fishing opportunities at 30 national wildlife refuges across the country's National Wildlife Refuge system. American sportsmen and women contribute over $1 billion a year to fund conservation. Without hunters and anglers, we wouldn't be able to conserve wildlife and habitat. Without access to our public lands like national wildlife refuges, many hunters would have nowhere to go, Secretary Zinke said in a release. The last thing I want is to see hunting become an elite sport rather than a tradition passed on from generation to generation. Today's announcement protects critical conservation funding and ensures sportsmen have access to public lands for generations to come, he added. According to WHYY, deer in the refuge were previously killed by U.S. Department of Agriculture's Wildlife Services and the meat donated to state food banks. Iowa squirrel hunter accidentally shoots own brother on first day of season. This story is from the Fox News website and was reported by Michael Bartiromo. On September 1st, the opening day of Iowa squirrel hunting season, a 50-year-old man accidentally shot his brother, 55, at the Brushy Creek State Recreation Area, the Iowa Department of Natural Resources has reported. Sal Boonpan and his brother Cor were hunting with two others when Cor accidentally shot Sal in the upper body, authorities believe. It is unclear what type of gun Cor was using, but the Department of Natural Resources had earlier suggested 22 rifles or shotguns in a news release ahead of opening day. Sal, who was initially rushed to a hospital in Webster City before being brought to Des Moines for further treatment. His injuries are said to be non-life-threatening. The Iowa Department of Natural Resources are investigating the incident, though they do not suspect foul play. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. Special thanks to Daniel Applebaum as well as Ken DeRosiers for leads on some of the week's stories. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Well, thanks to Jim Keller for the Deer News. Without further ado, here is Zach FERENBAUGH from the Hunting Public. Zach FERENBAUGH, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you, my friend?
Doing well. How are you?
Yeah, doing well, man. Doing well. Where's home base? I know you guys get out and move around to different states. Where do you call home?
We all live in Iowa right now.
Okay.
We're all from different areas, but now we all live there.
All came from different locations and call Iowa home today. That's a good place to call home if you're a deer hunter.
Yeah, it is. It's been pretty fun. I've been there for I think this will be my fourth deer season, so my fourth fall.
Nice. And
it's I guess when I was growing up, I didn't even really know that places like Iowa existed. Like, it's some really good deer hunting.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in western Ohio, so pretty flat area, not a lot of timber, small woodlots, lots of farmland, lots of people, lots of hunters. And I grew up there, but my parents' family, like my grandparents and all their friends, they were from eastern Ohio, so east of Columbus, about an hour, and that area is pretty good for hunting. And I grew up hunting mostly there on like my grandpa's farm and then public land in that area, and then went to college in southern Ohio, southeast Ohio, and there's lots of public land down there and just totally different habitat. It's really hilly down there, in all timber, hardly any ag. So I guess just a lot of differences in the areas that I hunted growing up, and I think that's pretty cool because I don't know that every state necessarily has that, or everybody has the opportunity, I guess, to hunt different areas within a state even.
As you're describing that, I'm picturing this in my head because I just drove that. I just visited Dusty down around Dayton, and he lives in the western part of the state. And I drove home to New Hampshire, and I drove kind of across the country into that hilly area. And you're right. I think Ohio is unique in a sense because you have this vast agriculture that you get in the Midwest, but it's also got some of the hilliness of some of the New York and West Virginia type feel to it. So I don't know if there's another state in the country that's like that.
Yeah, like I said, I feel pretty fortunate to have grown up in that state, just because there's so much of different habitat, terrain, and I guess once I started traveling, it wasn't as much of a shock because just traveling within my own state growing up, and I got to see at least three totally different areas, and I think it just kind of made traveling and hunting, like what we're doing now, just a little bit easier because you kind of eliminate some of that shock in the difference. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep. No, that makes sense. You're Ohio's a fantastic deer state in and of itself, but you were drawn to Iowa. Why make the change?
Well, I was I got done with college. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I started applying for internships and actually got an internship with Midwest Whitetail. And I worked with them for a season. And then once I was done with my internship, I got hired on with them. So I moved out there full time. And I guess, I like, well, and then I just haven't left yet or up to this point. And I think that Iowa is a good, fun experience. And I think that, as a deer hunter, it is a really cool place to live. But at the same time, I like other areas, and I'm excited about hopefully someday, living in a different state and really getting to learn, the public areas around, just somewhere else. Just continuing to move and learn new areas, I guess, is of big interest to me. I think Iowa is just a cool, and I feel pretty fortunate to, have got to have learned that state, or at least the area that we live in. And, I think it's a dream for a lot of hunters. So, I can't complain about it.
Of all the states that you've hunted so far, is there a favorite?
Man, that's a tough question. I think they all have, their cool, unique, things about them. Like some states I like because there is a little bit more pressure. Some states I like because, the habitat is pretty cool and unique. I like them all for their own reasons, and I would hate to pick one.
Yeah. It's kind of like
I do like Ohio. I'm a little bit biased, maybe I really like Southern Ohio.
Yeah.
Especially for like turkey hunting, but as far as actually picking one, it's tough. They all have their unique challenges, and I guess that's what I like so much about traveling.
I think it's akin to Scotch. There's not a bad Scotch. They're just better Scotches.
Mm-hmm.
So each state, each hunting opportunity presents itself with different flavors and tones and experiences, but none of them are typically bad overall.
Yeah. I think as long as you go into it I think the key with traveling and I guess having fun and enjoying every state you go to is, setting realistic goals, whether you're hunting, deer, turkey, elk, or predators, whatever you want, whatever you're after. Like if you set realistic goals for that state based off of hunting pressure, amount of habitat, amount of other hunters, just in general, I think that, that's a big key to, having fun and really at the end of the day, having success. To me, having success is having fun and learning a new area. And I think if you get too caught up in, unrealistic goals for the area, then you can kind of take away from that experience.
Yep, I agree. Did you have anybody that was, or that you would consider a mentor growing up that taught you how to do all this stuff?
Yeah, my dad. I hunted with my dad and my grandpas, and I would say, and then some of their friends as well. Like we always had every year we'd have like the deer and turkey camp where for a week out of the year we'd go and we'd camp and we'd hunt public land and hunt deer and turkey. And, those guys that were at camp, they all had a huge influence on, me and my friends, and I think that's a cool thing to have. And I think at the time, I really liked it and I really enjoyed it, but I didn't realize how important that was at the time, especially when I was, 12, 13, when I first started going to camp. It was like, those guys taught me a lot about hunting just by sitting around and at camp and telling the stories and talking strategy, and then, hunting with all of them at times. I think that all that just kind of was combined into, I guess, what I am today. I think I learned a lot from all those people, and I'm very I feel very fortunate that I was influenced by other hunters. I think that there's a lot of people, no matter what age they get into the sport, they don't really have somebody, and they're kind of relying on media. And I think media can be good, but it can lead some people down the wrong path.
Yeah.
And trying to, gain knowledge for hunting.
Your partners in crime, Aaron Warburton and Greg Clements, is he part of your clan?
Yep.
Tell me about those guys. How'd you meet those guys?
Well, I met them working at Midwest Whitetail, and they have similar backgrounds. Aaron's from Missouri, Greg's from Nebraska. Grew up hunting, small pieces of private land and public land, just like I did. They had family, friends, and kind of mentored them as they were growing up. And then once they got to college, they wanted to do something within, I guess that kept them outside. I know Aaron always wanted to, be in hunting, filming, or editing, and he pretty much did that all through high school and college, and then got a job at Midwest Whitetail. And then Greg, for a while, did a little bit of deer research. He was working in Nebraska doing deer research, and he was doing a lot of studies on deer. Like, he was trapping deer, he was shooting them with darts and tagging them, and just all kinds of different deer studies. I don't even know all the details of all that stuff, but eventually he wanted to get a little bit more into the filming and editing, and he got a job at Midwest Whitetail, I think maybe just the year before Aaron did. And then a couple of years down the road, I came along, and we just hit it off because we all had the same kind of background and the same, our interests were really evolving and kind of trying to think outside of the box all at the same time. And it was fun to just have people to, we weren't at home, we weren't hunting with our old hunting buddies anymore, but it was nice to have other people. And there were other guys too at the time, Eric Barber and John Lewis, Luke Nissen, were all people that were working there at the time. And we, it was fun to have a group where we could just bounce these ideas off of and try new stuff. And I think that's really ultimately how it ended up working out. And, all those people that I mentioned, we're all still close today, always calling each other, texting each other, about what's going on and what we're thinking about. And I think that that's kind of the cool thing, probably the coolest part about what we do is, not only do you have, your hunting buddies from back home and all the people that you've hunted with and met over the years from back home, but now you've got, people that you've met through work and through different companies and just really the kind of that culture that hunting, it can just bring people together. And I think that that's really cool. And I think that we've been pretty lucky to meet a lot of cool people over the years.
Gotcha. Looking back over the way the mediums have evolved over the years, if you go back, it seemed like the VHS tape and books, how-to books, how to deer hunt, were the medium of choice for guys in the 80s and early 90s. And then along came DVD, and the books and the VHS tapes have gone by the wayside. They're dinosaurs. Now the DVD has become a dinosaur, and I don't think you guys even dabbled in that. It's gone the way of the VHS tape. But you have embraced, from what I can tell, all the newest mediums that are available to distribution of content between your YouTube channel, your podcast. Looks like you're even getting some shows into Amazon Prime, and I didn't check this. Maybe you're even on Netflix. I don't know, but what is it that
not Netflix?
Not Netflix yet. Okay, so Amazon Prime is right there with that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm a Prime member. I certainly would, tune into this kind of thing. What made you decide that? And maybe there wasn't even a decision at all. It's just that's what you do, because that's where the new fad, or that's where the new place is, where everybody is starting to digest this stuff.
Yeah, I guess mostly just trying to think ahead of the game and kind of look. And I don't think that this is by any means the end of, that. I would hope in another 5 years we're taking a step into the next thing that we, I guess, have confidence in will be, I guess, the source of what people are, taking in their hunting media on. I think really for us, how the decision was made is like, hey, what are we looking at? We're not buying DVDs anymore. We don't get cable. Right. We haven't watched the Outdoor Channel in who knows how long, Sportsman Channel, any of that stuff. I mean, we just kind of wanted to try something that, try to take an approach on it of, where would we look if we were looking for, what we're hoping to produce, if that makes sense.
Right.
And, we had to look at things like, like you mentioned, like YouTube. YouTube is the number one thing. Amazon, and then Facebook and Instagram. So many people are spending so much time on social media these days that, it's almost taking over. Like how many people do sit there and watch TV, but they're actually just looking at their phone the whole time?
I see it all the time.
I guess it's crazy, but it's like, it's always, it's always evolving. Maybe in 5 years, Facebook and Instagram will be irrelevant, but as of right now, we feel that a lot of people are using it, so we just wanted to take advantage of just at least having some of our content. I think that what's cool is we get kind of unique content on every platform, but that's where our efforts are right now, just simply because, like you said, things come and go, and I think if you get our fear was to get content, with what not always looking ahead, I suppose. Yeah. And that's really how we just kind of got to where we are with it all.
It's funny that you mentioned that, how you watch TV, but you're always checking your phones. I do a lot of my work, both for podcasting and everything else, from a perched area in my home. I have a loft where this stuff gets produced, and I'll look down over the loft into the living room area, and the TV's on. The kids and the wife are sort of watching television, but they're all staring at their individual phones or somethings.
Right.
And I say, can you turn down the TV or turn it off? Like, no, we're watching it. So they think they're watching it, but they're looking at their phone. It's an insane mentality, but I think that's kind of the norm these days.
Yeah. Well, and what's crazy too, I guess, and kind of how we've got to a little bit different style than we were producing even at the beginning of when, like, even just a year ago. I think our video style is a little bit different, and it's a little bit faster paced, a little bit more laid back. And the reason that we're trying to get a little bit faster paced is because, I mean, let's face it, nobody has a lot of patience anymore. Like, no, if something's boring, you're going to turn it off. If it's not moving along, you're going to turn it off. And I think that's kind of helped us get into a little bit different style. And I think we're going to have to keep evolving. Like, I think the style that we have now, it'll always be similar, and our mission and goals are always going to be the same. But the way that we, I guess, portray, or through our editing, that's always going to be evolving too. And I think it's funny just to even watch some of our videos just from last year and how much different we would do it now than what we were doing then. And I think that a lot of that just comes down to, people are impatient, and they're not, there's all kinds of studies out there talking about like how long somebody actually will look at something. And like, I mean, the time frame of how long people are actually looking at stuff is just crazy low. Like they're not spending a lot of time on anything because everything's on demand. It's like if you don't like it, you're going to just move on to the next thing. So
yeah.
I guess that's helped build a little bit of that strategy as well.
Do you cater your videos on YouTube these days to that mentality of where you're trying to get in as much information and action as you can in a short amount of time?
Yeah, I mean, we always, it's funny, that there's no rules, there's no time slot. I'd say our goal would be to do probably a 10 to 12 minute video every time, but it's easier said than done, I guess, because we feel like that's the time slot that, our videos can do the best but it's also hard to get everything in there that you want to be still touch that educational factor, I guess. I think the educational thing, which is our main focus, is what ends up making things longer than, what we necessarily want. But the feedback has been good, so we feel like it's okay. In some videos, we go into it and it's like, all right, that'll be 15 minutes, and you get done with it and it's like, ooh, that was 24 minutes,
Gotcha.
So it's like the goal is to keep them short, keep them interesting, but at the same time, keep them informative and hopefully the viewers will learn something from them.
Gotcha. So you got the YouTube, and that's one format. Then you've switch over to that the long form format in a podcast. How was it for you guys to sit down and kind of change speeds there, where you're digging into every little nitty gritty detail you can get, and not really, I'd assume, not editing nearly as much as you would on a video?
I think what's so interesting about the podcast is it kind of came natural for us because it was something that we were doing every night anyway. Yep. I mean, we all either live in the same house or right down the road or literally next door neighbors, and like every night we sit in the house and sit there and talk about deer hunting and get into discussions about what we think is working, what's not working, and I guess the time thing, it's actually easier for us to go longer. Like we get done with those podcasts and we're like, how was that an hour? Like, how did we just talk for how did that time go by so fast? Because it felt like it was 15 minutes. So I think just like talking about deer hunting is such a natural thing for us, or hunting in general, whether it's deer, turkey, rabbits, or squirrel, whatever. I mean, literally any type of hunting is just kind of this is what we do. So I think that getting into the podcast was super, super natural. And then we just decided to start doing them live because we figured we could make it more, I guess, just timely of exactly what we were thinking about. Because, again, is what we were doing it. I guess I remember when we first started talking about doing them live, it's like, we're doing it anyway. Like at night, we're going to be sitting there, eating dinner, talking about the strategy that, we've been using anyway. Like we might as well just do them live and people be able to, listen to at least our theories and stuff in the moment. So that way it's not like having to go back and like try to link it with a video. It's like we're trying to produce everything as real time as possible just to keep it as relatable as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. I think the audiences are different, and maybe you disagree. I don't know, but it seems like people that, obviously are listening to podcasts, are driving or are in a quiet location or at work, and they want that. They have that time for that long form podcast. But if you're watching YouTube, you're probably not watching it while you're driving, but if you're sitting down somewhere and can not be distracted, you'll watch a video for 5 to 10 minutes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think just having the podcast, so we have it on our Facebook Live, but then some of them we put on YouTube, and all of them we put on iTunes and Podbean. So I think the nice thing is you can kind of, whatever way you want to take it in, like you said, everybody's a little bit different, however you want to take it in. I think that there's a version of it for everybody out there.
And then I think the big leap was to go to a format where you could get paid for people to see this stuff. I mean, I know YouTube has their mechanisms and certainly their sponsorship, but to make that leap into Prime Video on Amazon, that to me is like the old DVD, but that's how everybody's doing it. Like if you want to watch a DVD, this is how you're going to do it these days. Plus it has the TV kind of feel to it too, where you can go episode by episode.
Right. And yeah, we're just, I guess, trying to not limit ourselves to one thing too much is the big thing. You know, we've kind of got multiple different types of media out there, and we're just trying not to keep it too like I said, all eggs in one basket, because if at one point somebody stops listening to podcasts or stops watching YouTube, like we don't want to be like, oh no, what are we gonna do now? So.
It makes sense to me. I think it's smart for you guys to be in all these different arenas. And I think more of this Amazon video, Netflix video was probably be even more warranted down the road. It's a la carte. I want it now, and this is what I want, exactly what I want, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yep. That makes sense. How was the process? I think this is one question that some people may be having right now, because I see different people that want to do what you're doing. Then they try to figure out, well, where should I be? Should I be on Instagram? Should I be on Facebook? Should I be on Pinterest? Should I be on Amazon? Should I have a YouTube channel anymore? Should I have a podcast? What's your opinion? Where should people be today?
I think that as of right now, I think the biggest thing is to have a product that people, are going to, they're going to watch or listen to on demand, something that's different, but then just have it on, I guess, what are you using, or what do you think that your target audience is using? And for us, our target audience, is our age, or I guess anywhere from, a 10-year-old getting into hunting to, people that are our parents or grandparents' age, what are they looking at? And a lot of them are looking at, everybody's kind of making that transition to the social platforms, and as of right now, YouTube or Netflix, Amazon, a lot of people are taking in their media that way.
Yeah.
So I think the big thing, if I was going to tell somebody where to start, I think start with maybe one or two things, and then really, you ask like, how's the process, or what is the process like? It's a lot of work, because it's just a lot of staying consistent. I think that, like I tell people, it's like I'm a lot of times making sure that we're posting enough to Facebook and Instagram, and replying to messages and comments, and it's like, oh yeah, well, that's your job. Well, it literally can take every waking hour. It's like, if you're not staying consistent on it too, is I think where that's where we've been fortunate enough to grow, is we're just like working as hard as we can at it, and it is a grind. And I think that that we are fortunate to where we're able to do stuff that's really fun, but it's also just tons and tons of work, and sometimes it can get like very stressful, just because there's so much to be done all the time. But we're feeling good about it, and we're continuing to grow. So
gotcha.
Just got to keep grinding at it, I guess.
What was the process like to jump into Amazon? I think that's something that people are curious about. Like, yes, I think most people will say that that's the next frontier, so to speak. But what's the process? I mean, was it complicated? Was it as easy as a YouTube thing or creating a podcast, or is it pretty much all the same?
I guess I have never been the one to deal with it as much. Greg and Aaron are mostly kind of in charge of that aspect of things.
Okay.
But as far as I know, it wasn't like anything totally crazy. Like, I wouldn't say it was that much different than, kind of diving into like a YouTube channel and just trying to structure it the way that you want to structure it. I don't know that it's been something that's been that much more difficult. I think the big thing with is it kind of sounds funny, but there's like closed captioning things with Amazon, like your subtitles and closed captioning, and that's probably the most time consuming thing about Amazon. It's just like trying to make sure all that's correct and I would say that is the hardest part of the process at this point. Now that it's established, it's just like going through all those videos and getting those subtitles on there. And there's so many different ways you can do it, but
Right.
we do it all ourselves just to try to save money, and it's time consuming.
Right. That makes sense. So in order to have an audience of any sort, I know for sure you have to have good content. And looking at all your stuff on all formats, it's all really good content. And I would say that it's illustrated by the request that I had to have you guys come on my show here. People are watching, people are looking, people are enjoying what you're doing. So in order to do that, you have to be really good at your craft. And it looks like you guys do not shy away from getting dirty, getting into the thick stuff, and going where the bucks roam. So let's talk about some of your strategies and techniques, and how do you get to the places where you want to go? How do you decide the lands you want to hunt, the states you want to hunt, and once you get there, well, what's the layout? What am I thinking when I get there?
Yeah, I guess just to start all that, like you said, we aren't afraid of getting dirty and trying to get back in there and, do the things that other hunters aren't. And I guess through, if you listen to a lot of people that hunt public land, strictly or mostly public land or heavily pressured lands in general, that you hear that all the time. And, you got to go where other hunters aren't, and you got to do things that other hunters are not doing. And I think that's kind of the most exciting thing about what we do, is trying to do things that everybody else isn't doing, and
right.
And I think that, there's times in hunting where, general strategies, everybody kind of doing the same general strategy will work. Like obviously hunting scrapes, obviously hunting a very heavily used scrape line in late October has worked for people for years. But I guess the fine details and how every situation differs is the part that we get excited about, and the part that we get excited about learning more about, and learning these different situations, different areas. And I guess to get to, the time when we're learning something different and picking a spot to go, we're not only looking for the places that are the best places to go hunting, but we're looking for something that's different.
Okay.
So, we're not necessarily always going to be hunting, the best states for big bucks. At some point, we're going to go to states where, like Pennsylvania, you hear Pennsylvania all the time of how much hunting pressure there is, or Michigan. And we want to start doing some stuff like that, and just, continue to learn and continue to understand these different situations. But I guess to get, to picking a spot, I guess, is a good place to start.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
We all kind of do it a little bit different, right? We all have kind of different things that we're attracted to, but the big thing that we all do when we look at a map, is okay, how much access does this piece of public land have?
Gotcha.
The more access, the easier it is for more hunters to get onto that piece. And I think that's always a good starting point, is, how much access is there. Now, the next step is how much land barrier is on that piece. So whether it's a river, a slough, steep terrain, bluffs, whatever it is, how many factors are going to come into play to just keep, making it one step harder to get back in there. And when we find our, the best spots that we've hunted, there's generally a number of different factors that just make that piece more and more, limited for hunter access. I guess that's kind of something that you hear across the board, but, we're always trying to dig into more situational type tactics when we, just because we don't want to be too generalized, if that makes sense.
It does. And hunting public land, I think that makes as much sense as you can about public land. Is, yeah, there might be some deer there early on, but it's so accessible that the deer won't be there for very long once the season starts. So you got to plan to maneuver where the other hunters probably aren't going to venture out to go, because who knows why they don't go there. Maybe it's inability, maybe it's lack of desire to put that much effort in. Whatever it is, you need to figure out where they're not going to go, because that's where the deer will. That's where the pressure is off.
Right.
And they're going to find sanctuary there. So I think what you're doing is extremely smart, and it sounds like you're looking for those obstructions that will keep not the deer from going there, but will keep the hunters from going there.
Yeah, and when you find it, it gets pretty exciting, because you can find the type of sign that you're looking for, and it makes setting up a lot easier when you've got an area where there's not much. I mean, there may be pressure surrounding the spot, but it makes picking a spot to set up once you've found that kind of secluded area a lot easier. And it's a process, and it's a struggle, and it's a process of elimination. It takes a lot of looking at maps, driving around, putting boots on the ground. We always say we're always scouting one way or another. Like, it doesn't matter if we're there, or if we're sitting at the computer, or if we're just simply driving around a general area. You're always looking at what deer are doing in a given area, or where it's going to be harder for people to access. Just constantly scouting. And I think that whether you're hunting public or private, that should you should be, or if you're looking for more success or looking to improve, and learn and continue to learn, you should always be scouting in some fashion.
Yep. So let's kind of paint a hypothetical scenario. So you've got like public land access. You see that there's area for hunters to get into, but there's a stream that runs behind the main piece, and maybe there's a small corridor that the deer can cross through, or that's good enough for a deer, but not really great for a human. Is that, to me, that says stream, it might be canoe, or some deeper waders that would, just to give you that ability to access it. Yeah, I'm gonna take a different access point and get in through different mechanisms to get to that back piece where nobody's going, but the deer can get there in a heartbeat.
Yeah, we're like, for a really good example, or what you just said, we're looking at water access as much as possible. We have a lot of areas that we hunt that have a lot of water on them, and that's new to me, and that's exciting for me, because a lot of the places that I hunted public land back in Ohio, they didn't have a lot of water access. Right. A couple did, but not a whole lot. So it's exciting for me, and it's something that I look into quite a bit when picking a spot, especially in our home state now. We've got lots of rivers, and the way that the state buys land and owns land in the area, like, there's lots of rivers and streams that have public access. So that's something that we're looking at a lot. Well, in like you said, we'll use anything from a canoe. We've used kayaks. We just recently, a couple friends one friend and an intern actually both have John boats. Yep. And then waders, and just really anything, like you said, to just do something that is just maybe not necessarily convenient. If it's inconvenient, then that just is eliminating huge portions of hunters, and I think being willing to do stuff like that can really increase your odds of getting in the right types of locations on public land.
Gotcha. How do you decide?
Even if it's, honestly, I was going to mention one more thing. In Ohio, a lot of the stuff that we hunted was so thick. I mean, like, seriously, just painfully thick, to where, like, deer aren't even walking through it. If you can find a way to get through that, I don't know if it's buying an expensive pair of brush pants or something, but anything to just, I guess, separate what you're doing from the bulk of hunters is just going to help, like I said, get you in the right positions.
Gotcha. Let's take a little coffee break and hear from our friends at Hunter's Blend Coffee and Rackology. And then when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Zach FERENBAUGH from the Hunting Public.
I still can't believe that's all you're taking.
I got everything I need all in one bag.
Rackology Deer Supplement and Attractant, developed through years of intense scientific research, comes a product that puts it all in one bag. Superior attractant, scientifically formulated vitamins and minerals, and all at a much better price. To get yours today, please check out rackology.org for a list of dealers. Rackology, how can you afford not to use it? Everything deer need, all in one bag.
Hunter-friendly coffee retailers are great, but ever wonder where they buy it from? Now there's a company that imports directly from farmers, zero middlemen, roasts it, and ships it right to your door. From the farmer's fields to your morning cup, Hunter's Blend Coffee has been in the hands of hunters. Through their giving, your coffee supports the RMEF, Whitetails Unlimited, and Women's Hunting Associations, and many others. Now you can defend hunting one cup at a time. Not bad for a cup of coffee. And did I mention, it is so good. And now back to our conversation with Zach FERENBAUGH from the Hunting Public. All right, so you've figured out where you want to hunt. How do you decide when to hunt? I always hear this, well, you want to hunt certain moon phases or certain weather patterns or certain times of the reproductive cycle of the deer. When do you decide it's time to get in?
That's a really good question. A lot of times we have enough of a choice that it doesn't necessarily matter. Like if it's decent, if it's a decent day and we've got time or we've got enough time to where, we've got work done, we're going to try something. So a lot of that comes down to more specifics, right? So, some areas like, I guess let's put it this way. We're always targeting where bedding areas, and more specifically, we're trying to target the areas where we think a mature buck is going to bed and spend most of his daylight hours. The time frame, if we feel confident that we can find that area, the time frame doesn't matter as much. It is in a given day. It just may matter the conditions within that day until it becomes the rut. And then once the rut hits, it's almost a totally different thing. But, like early on in the season, it's going to vary so much of when. So, for example, on a hot day early in the season, maybe it's like in Iowa, we have an October 1 opener. Last year on October 1st, me and Jake went in and we crawled like 100 yards into this bedding area and set up on a small water source in there. Okay. We saw a handful of does and small bucks, but no mature bucks. But I guess the point is like, on that given day with those conditions, we're going to pick, a specific spot to set up on based off those conditions. In that instance, it was water. Maybe it's a windier day, first cold front of the season, and we know that there's a good bedding area where there's likely a mature buck or two, and really close there's some oak trees that, with that high wind and that cold front is going to knock some acorns out of the tree. Maybe on that given day we pick that specific, stand site or setup or whatever. But it's all really relative to, even specific days or specific little chunks of time. Like it's so hard to say exactly when, because we truly believe that if you've got the opportunity to go hunt, you should go hunt something. You should go try something. You should have enough ideas or places to hunt, whether it's a mixture of public and private or all private or all public, whatever. Like you should have enough ideas that you can bounce around and try different stuff and different strategies for every given day. I mean, obviously, if we had a choice of one time to hunt, it would probably be at some time in November. But there's a lot of season that doesn't encompass that time frame. So,
right.
I guess one other thing would be is just like obviously colder, or not obviously, but colder days. If we got a cold front day, we're out there no matter what. I mean, if it's good, decent, breezy day, high pressure, cold front, we're hunting. Gotcha. And those are the days that I would say we focus on the most.
Gotcha. And what type of equipment are you using to stage these areas? Are you and what style hunting are you using? Are you gun hunting, bow hunting? Are you on the ground, blind hunting? You're in the tree using climbers or ladders or predetermined areas where you stuck a stand, or are you going in with sticks? What type of strategies are you employing there?
We're using, I guess, as far as weapons, we're using bows and guns. Whatever season it is, we like doing both. We like the challenges of both. We don't necessarily feel like, as far as weapons go, that hunting public land, they both offer their wide variety of challenges. But as far as gear, we like to be mobile. We don't like to be, I guess, going to setups more than once. We will, and we have, but we like to stay mobile. So we use hang-on tree stands with minimal amounts of sticks. We generally carry 4 sticks with us.
Okay.
And then a stand. We would like to get into we're really excited about at some point trying saddle hunting.
Right. John Eberhard, right?
Yeah. And we've heard lots of good things from a lot of different people saying those are really fun and can help you stay a little bit more mobile, even than the hang-ons. And then something that we've been doing the last couple of years, and even a lot more last year, and I plan to do even more of in the future, is just ground hunting. I think when you really talk about the ultimate way to be mobile, not limiting yourself to a stand or even if you're hunting with a mobile stand setup, you still feel like if you've got it on your back that you've got to hang it up.
Right.
Where if you don't have the stand, like, you don't feel like you have to be anywhere. And I think that for me, that has been this like really freeing thing. Like, I feel like I'm not limited to anything. Like, I can just go hunting, and I can go kind of scout and figure things out and be mobile and set up when I find the thing that I really, really want to set up on, and I don't feel like I'm weighing myself down with the stand. And to do that, hunting on the ground, we've tried to get a little bit creative with kind of how we blend in. We've been wearing ghillie suits or leafy suits. Sometimes we'll carry like a little decoy. And I watch one of the videos that I really do like watching is Whitetail Adrenaline, and
yeah,
I watched how much success they were having hunting on the ground, and I was like, I got to do more of that, because it looks, for one, fun. Like, I mean, just fun as can be, and it is. Like, being eye to eye with whitetail is like incredible, but also just, everybody kind of gets a little bit burnt out on carrying a tree stand or sitting in the same types of spots. And now I just feel like hunting is so fun, because like, it doesn't matter. Like, if you don't have a point, if you don't have a point A and a point B, you can just go hunting and you have all this freedom. And I think that I feel like I've learned a lot more by not carrying a tree stand and not feeling like I had to set up in a specific spot. It's just, being on the ground has opened up a lot of learning for me. And I also think that the more and more I do it, the more that I think that a guy on more limited time than I have could be more efficient in seeing and killing deer, bucks, or whatever the goal is, by being on the ground. I think that, I guess I say this a lot to my friends, and no offense to anybody by saying this, but like, I don't know who made it a rule that you got to sit in a deer stand to hunt deer, but like, there's plenty of ground opportunity. And I think that it's just something that has kind of been lost, and it's almost like, since it's not the norm, it's like this thing that freaks people out, and like, it could never work, but like, it totally works. I mean, we had so many good, clean, ethical shots at deer last year on the ground, if at least the same amount, if not more, than the hunts that we were in tree stands. Yeah. So
I would second that. I mean, I think climbing in, having a elevated perspective can be an advantage in certain terrain, but
definitely,
I don't think it eliminates your opportunity. I think I have as many opportunity on the ground, sometimes more, because I'm not carrying that extra weight. I don't have to feel like I'm stopping at a certain point. I can actually abandon that quickly. I can abandon one spot and move to another in a stealth manner and probably get a good shot on,
Yeah. And a lot of times I think with, pressured areas, whether that's public or private, deer have, in my opinion, grown pretty dang accustomed to people being in tree stands. And one thing I've noticed, and one pretty funny observation that I've had, is like every time that I've been on the ground and a deer smells me, guess where the first place it looks is? Up.
Up, right.
Every time. They never look down. They never start looking on the ground. They always start looking up.
Yeah.
Like every time it's a deer that's, over a year and a half old, like a doe, buck, whatever, they start looking up. They start looking in the trees for you. And that's crazy to me, is that deer have grown so accustomed to smelling humans in trees that when you're on the ground in stationary, they just assume that you are up in a tree.
Yeah.
And that's pretty wild.
Yep. Lately, and I love to get close. If nothing more, even if it's not a deer I'm going to kill, just for the thrill of getting that close and knowing that you did on the ground, or being able to reach out and touch one, that's pretty darn thrilling. And to see that they're oblivious, or if they're feeling like something's wrong, that they are looking up, they're not looking around. It's kind of weird.
Right.
It's like I can
it is weird.
Yeah, I can hear you eating acorns right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That's how close you can get on the ground, and they don't seem to care if you're hidden well enough, or either with the right camo or in the right makeshift blind, whatever it is. Plus, and I found that good cover scent or scent elimination seems to help tremendously.
Yeah. See, it's interesting you say that, and I think that everybody's got different opinions on it. I actually have grown pretty, I guess, carefree when it comes to trying to cover my human odor, and we always are discussing it, and I think that the conclusion we've come down to is it can help, and it definitely will save your butt in some situations. But the reason that we kind of stopped and became laid back on it and not too worried about it is we simply don't have time. When we're trying to crank out a podcast and a video or two a day, as a group, like, while still trying to stay active on our social media and stuff, and then get enough time to eat and sleep and hunt as well. It's like, no way.
Yeah.
So, we've just become pretty carefree on it, but I think the biggest thing is just, like you said, being conscious of your setup, the wind, and if you are moving, for example, one of the mistakes that I made early last year while hunting on the ground, and I try to avoid at this point as much as possible, is kind of getting caught off guard when moving or still hunting.
Right.
I've really got kind of fallen in love with still hunting because I'm a kind of a squirrely guy. I'm not very patient. I can't.
Yep.
I think that's kind of why ground hunting kind of caught my attention in the first place. I don't like being in a stand for more than like 2 hours.
Right.
I'm just impatient. It's just the nature of my personality. So with still hunting, what I like about that is you can, you're always in the game. You're always hunting as long as you're, around where you would suspect deer are going to be. But, you can just keep going to the next spot. And in doing that, I always hope to be finding, the hottest sign, which is something we can touch on later if you'd like. But
yeah. Yep.
I think that's something that's super, super important and kind of gets overlooked. And anyway, but while still hunting, one of the mistakes that we made last year is we'd stopped and we were talking about all the hot sign that we were seeing. And I was talking to the camera or Jake, like we were just having a conversation. And all of a sudden I look up and there's a shooter buck coming towards us, and we just did not have enough cover.
Gotcha.
Had we had enough cover, I think we'd have got him. But I think always planning ahead, or looking at that next move and looking how you're going to draw, when you're going to draw, when you're going to shoot, and always be extremely focused is very, very important when you're on the ground or a tree stand. But I think being on the ground and being mobile, kind of, you have to almost take it a step further. Like, you cannot take any second for granted, because as soon as you let your guard down, right, boom, there he is, right, and then you've messed it up.
Yeah, I appreciate what you said about the scent, although I tend to go a little crazy with the scent control. I think it does help in when there is a slight breeze and you can get close even if there is. But I think everybody's got a different experience on that. But if you look at the guys, as you had mentioned, from Whitetail Adrenaline, I don't think they shower for weeks. And when they go out on their road trips, and they're getting as close as anybody, and they're going to Walmart and buying some cheap khakis and using spray paint for camouflage. So I don't know if it really matters a ton when it comes right down to it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the other thing too. It's just like the time to actually get a shower. Like last year we hunted Nebraska, and it was 7+ days since I'd taken a shower.
Right.
And like there's no way that if a deer got downwind of me, it wasn't going to smell me. But it's just like sometimes it's just simply the time. I think the reason too that I guess we've kind of embraced it a little bit is just, I think that if you've got the time and that's something that, if somebody's got the time and it's something they enjoy and feel like it helps, by all means, I support it. I just would hate to see somebody stress themselves out over it. I used to get so stressed out and feel like I couldn't go hunting if I wasn't, if my clothes weren't, appropriately washed, or if I didn't have some sort of cover scent or something. And I honestly got to the point where like, I was struggling to go hunting sometimes because I was so stressed about it. And I think that if there's one thing and one reason that we've embraced it so much is just hoping that it doesn't hold anybody back from trying to go hunting regardless of the situation. You know?
Right. No, that makes sense. So let's jump right into what you mentioned there too. What is hot sign? When do you need to pay attention?
So I think it's going to differ for a lot of different states and what your deer density is. But I always say it like this. It's like when I find for the area that I'm hunting, like what I would think is the maximum amount of fresh sign. And that's going to be tracks, droppings, rubs, scrapes, beds. When I start to get like, you kind of get bird doggy, all of a sudden you're like, ooh, that's a fresh scrape. And you look 20 yards ahead and you're like, ooh, that's a big rub. And then you finally hit a transition line or something. There's just trails and big tracks and stuff coming out of it everywhere. To me, that's telling the hunter that this is where the deer are right now. And I think there's other ways to do it. I don't personally own any trail cameras and run them for myself anymore. Like we have some as a group, but I don't worry about it too much. It's just another thing I think for me to kind of get stressed out about, or I have got a number of different reasons, and I don't think there's anything wrong with them. I think they're one way to find where the deer are, but I think kind of a lost habit is just trying to find, where is all that sign and how does it relate to where the deer are right now? And a good example of that, I think, would be like an early season hunt. Mm-hmm. So if you've got a September opener, I think like Wisconsin has got like a September 15. We're going to Nebraska with a September 1. Kentucky's a September 1. And surely there's, I think North Dakota is a September 1. There's surely a number of different states where you've got an earlier opener. And I think that is a beautiful time to hunt hot sign. And the reason being is, if you're hunting bucks. The reason being is those deer are literally shedding their velvet right now. Yep. So when you find a fresh rub, it is right now. Like, it's not 2 weeks ago, it's not a week ago, it's not a month ago. It is like within the last, probably few days. And I think that's a really good kind of basic example of what I mean by hot sign. And that's how we ultimately had success in Nebraska last year. It was just like getting really, really aggressive, getting into the bedding areas and just looking for, were we finding buck sign or were we finding doe sign? At that time, we weren't worried about finding a bunch of tracks if there weren't a bunch of rubs around them. There might be heavily used trails and there might be a bunch of does coming out, but if there's not a single rub in that bedding area, mark it off. Like they're not in there. And when we would find the rubs, in the buck sign, I guess, that's when we were having our best hunts. And I think, deer sightings are good, but if you're hunting mature bucks, you got to be looking for like where there's mature buck sign. And I think that, there's different, it all varies at different times of the year. I guess another really good example I have is in 2016, we were hunting a bedding area that had tons and tons and tons of deer in it and tons of big bucks. Like I think we counted like 7 shooters in like 3 days of hunting back there. And what had happened there is like there was a lot of pressure on that specific piece, but in the very back corner, like literally as far away as you could get from any road, there was a thick ridge. And, it was pretty defined transition lines in there. And as soon as you started getting back on that bedding area, and we had scouted it the summer prior, but as soon as we got back in there, like you'd walk for a mile and you wouldn't hardly see, you would see some scrapes and rubs here and there, and they might be fresh scrapes and rubs, but like as soon as we got back into that back corner where that bedding area was, there were seriously scrapes everywhere. There were rubs everywhere. There were big tracks. Like if it could have been rubbed, it was rubbed.
Yep.
If it could have been scraped, it was scraped. And now obviously our area in Iowa's got a high deer density, but that stuff really comes into play. That's telling you that those deer are thick in that bedding area right now. I guess I have one more quick example, and then we can maybe go into a different topic or even touch on something different within the hot sign. But so Western Ohio, where I grew up, I was actually taking a walk with my aunt and cousin, non-hunters, and I was taking a walk, and it would have been after the Ohio gun seasons, so it was like around Christmas time.
Yeah,
we were taking a walk in the woods behind my parents' house, and there was a kind of a point or a corner of the woods that I knew just from being around that area. That was a place that lots of deer bedded, and we were walking, and we got right to the edge of that thicket, or that where the beds would have started, and right on the corner there's just this massive scrape. It's December. It's Christmas. There's a huge like car hood scrape that is fresh, big buck tracks in it. Multiple deer hitting it. The trails are fresh.
Yep.
And the scrape's fresh. That's December 25th.
Right.
So if you're hunting, if you're hunting and you're finding that type of sign, even into by January, that stuff is telling you where those deer are right now. And I think one advantage that you get by hunting on the ground, or even if you do have a mobile stand set up, you can constantly be looking for where that sign is, and you're not going to waste going into a predetermined location, setting up, and the deer not being there. For whatever reason, factors change every year. Some places, the deer are always going to be there at a given time, but other places, depending on pressure, food sources, weather, whatever, that, one year they might be really good, but maybe the next year there's no standing corn and the deer aren't in that area. Maybe they've shifted to a different spot. And I think that by being mobile on the ground or with a mobile tree stand setup, you're able to find that hot sign, and you're able to eliminate some of those, I guess, wasted sits that I felt like I had when I was going to predetermined locations.
Gotcha. Very good. Excellent. Let's move on to a deer hunt. Let's put all these strategies and things into a package that actually brought you on a deer hunt of some sort. And let's get into some of the details of how this all came to be. Where are we going to go on this hunt?
I guess I got two really good examples, and those both the bucks I shot last year. Let's do the Nebraska one. I think that one's kind of a unique strategy that not a lot of, I guess it's not something that a lot of people are talking about.
Okay.
So we went to Nebraska, had no prior knowledge of this place. We had basically map scouted it for like 2 or 3 days before we went there. Just kind of went on a whim. It was before we were even producing videos for the hunting public. Like we just were trying to decide what we were going to do with our lives, and just decided that we were going to go hunting. Yeah. So myself, Jake and Brody were interns for us last year. They were kind of in the same boat. They ended up just kind of working as interns with us. Mm-hmm. We'll go to Nebraska, and we started by kind of like just getting a feel for the area, checking out where the access was, and trying to get a feel for the pressure. And we kind of figured out some areas that we were going to focus on. And the very first thing that we did was observe from a distance and just kind of get a general feel for what types of areas these deer were going to go into. And we observed some bucks go into kind of an area that there was a transition of kind of some cedars and some marshy habitat, and that's where they went into bed. So the first night we went in there, hunted those bucks that we watched kind of go into that bedding area, saw a couple of them. But from that point on, we kind of had an idea of, okay, we've got the general areas that we want to hunt. We've got a general pattern of what types of habitat these deer are going to bed in. Now let's get down and dirty and let's figure out where exactly these deer, and specifically the bucks, are going to be. Because you're still taking a big area and you're trying to shrink it down, right? Because the what looks to be the right habitat is still pretty generalized. So what we would do is we would just go in morning or evening and we would just still hunt through a whole potential bedding area. And when we would find, the buck sign, which at that time frame was pretty easy, was the rubs.
Yep.
The fresh rubs from that year. We knew that those are the areas that those bucks were, bedding in. And in turn, we had a number of really good hunts where we were encountering bucks, and just a few, weird things happened where, we weren't able to get a shot, but we eventually got to a point where we were checking out this different area, and this is kind of where the success began on the where we finally got the shot.
Yeah.
So we found this place that was very small, didn't have a lot of acreage. I bet you it was only 10 acres, and it was right off the road. But every time we got to looking at it, every time we drove past there was nobody pulled in there. Not a single hunter was there. So just to check and see if the habit, or if the habitat was right, and kind of get in there and do our scouting, what we decided to do was what we call a wind bump. And basically, both Brody and I had tags. So Brody went on the one side of the bedding area, I went on the other, and I slowly just kind of scouted and zigzagged my way back and forth through this bedding area, letting my scent drift down through it, hoping that if a deer was in that bedding area, it would escape slowly, not blowing out like you're doing a gun deer drive where you're making a bunch of noise and trying to get them running. We're just trying to get them to slip out of their beds, leave the bedding area, and hopefully get a shot. Well, it didn't really work out that to where we got a shot, but by getting in there, I jumped a number of deer and figured out how they were bedding in this area and jumped a nice buck, which we're pretty sure is the one I ended up killing a couple days later. He didn't go past them, but he escaped the bedding area, and I watched him go up over the hill. And again, kind of went through this whole area, scouted it. I mean, directly pushed deer out of it on purpose, but felt like it needed to do that to get in there and really figure out how the deer were living in this thick bedding area.
Yeah.
So went through the whole thing, eventually picked a tree, and we hadn't been hunting out of tree stands up until this point, but the only way, this area was so thick that the only way we were going to get a shot is if we were up a little bit. So I'd picked a tree, we waited a day, gave that spot a break, went back, hunted it so I guess it'd be day one we bumped it, gave it a break. Day 3, we hunted it, saw most of the same deer, didn't see the big buck, and then we hunted it again on the 4th day, and on the 4th morning, we had buck come in at first light, heard him assumed it was a buck, could hear him walking around the bedding area, making what sounded like rubs, and could hear his antlers hitting stuff. Walked out to about 60 yards, bedded down, and we never saw him, but we could just hear, all this stuff going on through the thick vegetation. About 8:30 in the morning, wind picks up and starts kind of shifting and moving. I guess it was real calm, and then it moved from real calm to a pretty steady south wind. And when that wind picked up, in our theory, he was getting up to move and shift his bed just based off how the wind was changing.
Yep.
And in turn, he walked to 10 yards, and we shot him at 10 yards. So I guess that's kind of one of the cooler, processes that I've had on a hunt up to this point, just because it was so, the tactics were so much different than what, I guess I had always read. And, I would always read, never hunt the mornings in September. Well, every hunt that we had that we saw nice bucks was in the morning.
Right.
like, and to eventually get to the spot where we killed the deer, like I spooked them all on purpose, and like, no, I guess not a lot of people would be totally excited to do that, but we were, and we felt like it was a good strategy, and it ended up working.
Right.
So I think, getting back to like one of probably the first things that I said is just thinking of how you can hunt differently than every other hunter. How can you think outside of the box and be in an area where not everybody wants to be, or how do you do something that not everybody wants to be? In this situation, it was just being mobile, trying to avoid that hunting pressure, and then getting aggressive and figuring out where exactly they wanted to be, and it ended up paying off.
That's so smart when you put that in perspective. Yes, you get all these rules, right? These things that you got to follow based off of what everybody thinks to be true. And it seems to be the one time or the few times that you changed up against the rules that everybody lives by is when it all happens your way. I think that's so smart.
Yeah. I mean, how many times have you heard, like, and I hear this all the time, and I used to say it too. I mean, like, I think it went over my head, or I know it went over my head, and it's probably still will continue to go over my head in some situations. It's like, how many times you hear a guy say, man, I went into that stand and knew the wind was not quite right, but I figured I needed to try it. And that was the day he killed it.
Right.
Right. How many times have you heard somebody say that? I mean, like, pretty much every time. Right. Like every time, like you said, you do something a little bit different, a little bit off from what you would typically do, is ultimately when it pays off. I think one good quick point to kind of back that theory up again. We had a cool conversation a couple weeks ago with Todd Prignitz from White Knuckle Productions, and I didn't realize it, but he only the property that he owns is only 63 acres, and he will never hunt he won't hunt these set stands the whole season. Like he's constantly bouncing, even on 63 acres. He's constantly moving, trying to go on it, go after these deer on a different approach, just so that the deer aren't patterning him. And, I think we do that on such a, our group does that on such a big scale that we kind of forget about thinking about it on such a small scale. And that was really interesting to me. It was just to hear his strategy on, kind of basically tricking the deer out of his pattern. Like he was going to almost let them pattern him and then come after him from a different approach. And that's how he killed most of the deer that he kills, from what it sounds like. So
smart.
It can be on public, private, whatever. I think just thinking outside the box is really key.
Right. I'm with you, man. I think that's a great illustration of why you should switch it up frequently.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Very good. All right. I've got 10 rapid fire questions for you, Zach, and I didn't prep you for these, but I'll just blast through them here. What's your number one hunting tip of all time?
Think outside of the box.
Excellent. We all have these things that we got to have with us when we hunt, whether it's a good luck charm or something else, and we just kind of feel naked without it. What's that one thing for you?
Binoculars. If I don't have binoculars, I'm just like in pain. It's just like painful.
Right.
So important to me.
You're no longer that superhero without the binoculars, right?
Yeah, exactly.
A mere mortal. That's funny.
Yes.
What's your biggest pet peeve in life?
I actually just answered this for something else today. My biggest pet peeve is being too conservative and not being aggressive enough. Okay. I'd rather be too aggressive and mess stuff up and learn from the mistake than sit back and not learn anything.
Gotcha.
That's my biggest pet peeve. Get aggressive.
Yep, that makes sense. How old are you today?
I am 25.
25. All right. What would you tell the 16-year-old Zach, knowing what you know today?
I would tell him that don't get content, because I feel like at one point, especially around the college time frame, and part of that as I was getting more into fishing and other things as well at that time frame, but I just kind of got content with deer hunting. Not as much with turkey, but with deer I just got content with, some of the things that had worked in the past, and I wasn't thinking outside of the box enough. So gotcha. That's the one thing that I would really try to pound home to myself at that age is, don't get content. And I don't want to get content now. I don't want to get content when I'm 50. I hope to never do that.
Right. That's smart. Very smart. All right. You're at a hunting convention somewhere in the world, and a stranger comes up to you and asks you what you do for a living. What do you tell him?
I say I produce or film and edit and produce hunting videos that are on YouTube, and I do that with a group of friends.
Nice.
And that's pretty much what I tell them. I think it's sometimes hard for people to totally understand, but but generally,
right.
It creates some more questions.
It seems like today you could just say I'm a YouTuber, and people are like, oh, okay.
Yeah, YouTuber. I think it depends on the age class, you know, to a certain degree. Is like,
right. That makes sense. All right, you. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
Oh, eggs. Always eggs.
Eggs. Excellent.
Love eggs.
Love eggs myself. You get your own billboard on the side of a highway.
Can't get enough in the mornings.
Yeah, got that right. Bring me all the eggs and bacon that you have. Right.
Yes.
You get your own billboard on the side of a highway, and it's a blank canvas. You can put anything you want on it. What would it say? Maybe a hashtag of some sort.
Man, it would be something totally silly. I try not to take things too seriously, so
okay.
I guess one of the things, maybe something that I said just recently in a podcast that we did was we were talking about just like not caring too much about the type of buck that you shoot, or not caring. Like, we're trying to, always keep a level head of like, it's not about the size of the buck. And I said, nobody's going to care about your mounts when you're dead, to kind of put it into perspective. So maybe that's what I would say. Nobody's going to care about your mounts when you're dead. Have fun hunting or something like that.
I like that. That's pretty good. No, that's really good.
I think that's kind of what I stand for right in this moment, at least.
I'll second that. That's outstanding. All right. If I say the word successful to you, who's the first person that pops into your head and why?
Successful. I think that one of the biggest takeaways that I've ever learned from somebody, and one that just like, it's a simple, one of probably more of the simpler things that he says, and I'm referring to Dan Infault. He said, every time you see a deer, specifically, and even more so a mature buck, think about why he's there. Why is he there in that moment? And, really try to pick that apart. And I think that is like one of the most successful things to me. It's not about shooting the deer as much as it is constantly learning and not being content.
Right.
And I think that him saying that is success.
Right. Dan,
I think that is success.
Dan is a very smart deer hunter. Whatever he says goes. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yep.
Yeah. At least be thinking about it.
That's right. You better think about what Dan said. All right. Yeah. What's a typical day in your life look like?
Oh man, that varies so much depending on the time of the year. But I guess probably the most interesting time of the year would be deer season or turkey season, and a day in that time frame pretty much looks like this: wake up in a tent somewhere close to some public land, get up, drink coffee. Always drink coffee. Mm-hmm. Probably do a little bit of work, get ready to go hunting, hunt, get back to, camp or some sort of civilization at some point, and edit or work on, answering messages and emails and all that stuff, and pretty much work together with the group of guys that I'm with, and just do what we got to do to get the work done. And a lot of times that's a heck of a lot later than what we want.
Yep. Go
to sleep and do it all over again. And generally the sleep time, honestly, and I'm not even kidding when I say this, like, we're lucky if we're getting 4 hours of sleep during hunting season, and that's what makes it such a grind. It's like you're doing all this hunting and working and not really getting much sleep, and there's the hunting part of it's really fun, but sometimes the work can get to where it's wearing you down pretty good. So wow. I would say that's a pretty standard day during the hunting season.
Gotcha. And the last question was, what's a typical deer hunting day in your life look like? But it sounds like it's all the same to you.
Yeah. I guess the difference between like a non-deer hunting day and a deer hunting day would just be that sadly it's a lot more inside time. There's a lot of computer time, just trying to make sure that all things are done, or as many things are done before hunting season as possible. And I mean, any of that can be from making sure that the house is cleaned up to, making sure that you got all the fine details and you've read up on your laws and stuff for every state. I mean, it's just a lot more kind of inside work that needs to be done on a non-deer hunting day than a deer hunting day.
Right. I can see how knowing all the laws in each state, that can get tricky.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we always read the laws and, for every state and the general things. And then, you also got to look into different types of public land. Like some states treat WMAs differently than other states. Like in Ohio and Iowa, most or all the ones that I've ever hunted, are just generally public, general public land, where when we go south and turkey hunt, some of those WMAs are like closed for certain times of the year or limited draw or a number of different factors. So I think, reading up on laws is a very, very, very important thing. And also just time consuming. I mean, to make sure that you're caught up on all that stuff it's a lot of work.
Right. Gotcha. So, Zach, if we have created more questions than answers, or if we've left something unturned here, as people listen to this, where can people find you on social media, Amazon, YouTube, all that stuff?
We are on, if you search The Hunting Public on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Amazon, we're on Podbean, iTunes, Facebook. I don't know if I mentioned Facebook, but we're on all those platforms just under The Hunting Public. And we try to, I guess the most important thing about, and some people have asked us, why be on all those different platforms? The biggest thing is just like slightly different forms of content. Like, Instagram is a resource for us to put, some more of the cool pictures on there. Facebook is kind of a variety of all things. We like putting kind of short form videos on Facebook. Podcasts are a totally different thing. We just try to have as many different, we like to think of ourselves as just like just content creators just constantly and just can crank out as much stuff as possible. So that's kind of the reason for all those different things. And they all have different cool stuff on there. So I would recommend check out all of them because, like I said, they're just all different little outlets and they all got different unique stuff on them. Right.
Yeah. It sounds like each outlet, each medium will reveal new aspects of yourselves and what you guys are up to. And because the medium will allow for that. And I think that's what's so cool about what you guys are doing is that you're covering different mediums. And I don't see a lot of people covering all the places you are. Some people are good at one or maybe two, but you're all in the latest, greatest, newest places where content's being consumed. So well done.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Zach, it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show. Hopefully we can do it again sometime down the road when you guys are finished up another deer season. Certainly looking forward to this season. It's going to be chalking up to be a good one, I think. And, man, just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I really appreciate you having me on. It's been a blast. I always enjoy talking hunting.
I appreciate Zach coming on to the show. Zach, of course, is from The Hunting Public. He's got a YouTube channel. They've got a podcast. It's a good one, a very popular one. But I appreciate him taking the time to talk about all those things that are relative to today's world, like Amazon and YouTube and podcasting, and those things that are relative to the deer hunting world, like heavy hunting pressure, water access, being mobile without any restrictions, what hot sign really is, and how to actually execute a wind bump. That's something I don't think we've talked about much on this show. So, again, thanks to Zach. And Dusty, do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week?
Yeah, we do, Jay. And it's I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening, pretty much launching off this week. And
the Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used firearms, bows, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morsessportinggoods.com. FERENBAUGH.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morris's Sporting Goods.
You know, here in the Midwest, the crops are coming down, and you know, with the crops coming off the fields, and the deer are going to start utilizing morning and evening breakfast and dinner on the edges of these crop fields. You know, if you're somewhere that you don't have crops, it might be something you don't understand. But right now, my focal point is, you know, season opens today here in Ohio, the 24th, and it's just that time of year where you can set along a freshly cut cornfield or soybean field, and these whitetail they're naturally going to be out there grazing for missed corn, or corn that's fallen off the corn head, or beans that's come out of the bean head or the back of the combine, or maybe they spilled a pile of corn, turned in they're too much in their hopper. But, you know, you focus on these field edges, and it's something that, you know, if you play the wind and you play the fresh harvest, the deer curiosity really gets the best of them when it comes to freshly cut fields. And it's something that's been proven deadly for a great long time now, that these deer are going naturally. You know, it's almost like they don't realize the corn's down and people can see them for a first week or so. So that I'm going to focus on hunting the edge of freshly cut crops for the first 2 weeks, and it seems to be a great focal point for me to be able to kill a mature buck.
Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here in the studios with me?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Instagram and Twitter @ChasingAntler, Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Jay, where can the people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
Likewise, you can shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com, and you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Twitter, which is twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Instagram, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry, and YouTube, which is youtube.com/bigbuckregistry. On YouTube, you can listen to all of our podcasts in their entirety. As far as videos are concerned, it's a boring video, but the audio content is there, so you can actually listen to our podcast. You can also listen to all of our live shows that we've done on Thursday nights when we do them, and we've gone back and re-interviewed a lot of our previous guests we had on the show just to put a face to a voice, let's put it that way. You can always listen to our show on other places as well, not just YouTube. We're found on Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and as an Amazon Alexa skill. Go to Alexa and say, Alexa, enable Big Buck Registry. And if you would like to submit a buck to our page for consideration and be featured on our page in front of 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans, all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all of the instructions will be right there. I think that's pretty much everywhere we're at. I think that's a wrap, Dusty.
That's a whole lot of big buck, Jay.
Sure is. I'm Jay Scott.
I'm Dusty Phillips.
And this is the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.